Peace.
Hey, happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Yes. This is African Spiritual Conversations with Ananda and Zakai. Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
I just saw you.
Yes.
All the time. We're
Not
married.
all the time.
We're married. We're a team.
You were just like working, so you were.
That's true.
A little bit away.
That's true. So, we're here post Hurricane
Zeta or Zeta.
Zeta. My study of Greek languages is limited, so Zeta, maybe it's Zeta.
I think it's
Zeta. Yeah, she came
through.
Isn't
that like a sorority or something?
It is. There's several that use that.
Okay.
She came through and
it was so merciful.
Mm-hmm.
And Alorio Fuleleo, she was so merciful because honey.
Yes.
Because those other hurricanes that were like barreling for here earlier in the season, they were like category 3 and 4s, and they really did some damage in other places. And we're just so grateful because our power was restored yesterday, but a lot of other people are without power.
That's right. And even just around our neighborhood,
a
few blocks away, north, south, people still don't have power. So we're really blessed, and we're glad to have power to be here for this hour with you.
Yes.
For my rhyme scheme.
The power hour.
Yeah. So, so we come on and we talk about various things once a week and
relate it back to African spirituality.
Yes. We both practice traditional Ifa, Esheshe
Yoruba.
And we like to share what we have. And also we, have other traditions that we've studied and been a part of as well. So we kind of bring a mix of things to the table.
But all roads still lead back to Africa.
Yes. All roads back to Africa. No doubt about it.
So whatever conversation people are having, it's still an African spiritual conversation.
That's right. That's right. So I think today we want to talk about parenting, right?
Raising children in an ATR.
Raising children. Okay, raising children. It's interesting because I just heard someone the other day, and she was a single mom, and she was just saying how hard it is to raise children. And she said there is no book, there's no guideline, there's no class you could take. She said she's always just trying to figure it out. And there are books, and there are classes, and there are things like that. But I got, you get what she was saying. That it definitely isn't something that you can necessarily study up on. A lot of the things that you encounter when raising children are unique, particularly in the times we live in, where folks are really making a commitment to say, well, I don't want to necessarily do what grandma and them did or what mama and them did.
And I know that's right. Excuse us 1 second. His girlfriend, Nyla, who is usually with us. Nyla, do you want to go get in your house? Sit down. Nyla, go get in your house. Go get in your house. Excuse us. From time to time, you will see that she is definitely. We have a toddler.
Yes.
No. We have one that's 3.
Yes.
But we also have Nyla.
Yes.
And I'm going to coin the phrase a friend of mine has. She calls her lab pit mix Tasha the toddler. So we have 2 toddlers because this dog is definitely such a toddler.
There she is. So, but yeah, like we were saying, we're talking about not necessarily following the blueprint. Not that the things that, our parents, grandparents did were necessarily so wrong. It just depends. Maybe some people did have some negative things that happen. But people use the tools they have at the time they have them.
Use the tools that they have. Now let's go get in your house. Go now. they use the tools that they have, but a lot of our folks have are garnered from colonialization.
Yes, exactly. Coming from a slave tradition, the colonizer's mindset, ways to just survive, the whole thing about being seen and not heard, not wanting to cause a fuss.
Right.
So you don't want to bring attention that could bring a negative retribution, onto yourself or your child or your family. So a lot of those fear-based.
Especially when you're already living, like you were saying, fear-based. And fear comes from what? Oppression.
That's right.
Without oppression, there's no fear.
Mm-hmm.
Because without oppression, there's only liberation.
Right.
I think that I know for myself and my own person, because you came from a space that you came from a space. Our dog is our technical difficulty.
Yeah.
You came from a space where it wasn't a whole lot of. Hold on 1 second. You're gonna have to put her in her house. Okay, well, you want to put her outside on the balcony? Sorry about this.
Go ahead.
Because if we leave her with the children, she's going to disturb.
Wreak havoc. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so coming from a space where, I'm sorry, y'all. This dog is completely distracting me.
Yeah.
You want to just I'll put her out the room.
No, you're in the middle of saying what you're saying. Go ahead.
Coming from a space where my mother, I know for herself, she came from a lot of abuse, and a lot of the abuse was corporal punishment. And that played a lot. It weighed heavily on how we were raised and reared.
Mm-hmm.
My father, who is African, who is Nigerian, he necessarily didn't believe in beating. But what he did believe in was in order to, we have a very ill-behaved dog, in order to drive a point home, that you would verbally abuse.
Okay.
He wouldn't say verbally abuse. He would say, you make the child feel bad about themselves in order to basically win your affections.
So shaming.
Shaming was a huge yes.
Okay.
What
was a way to show that you were serious, right? Is that what it is?
I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like in my household, my dad was a disciplinarian. Mm-hmm. So there's I'm the youngest of 5, and there's I guess about an 8-year gap, 7 or 8 years between me and my next sibling,
older sibling,
and a lot of change happened in that time period. So they went through stuff that I didn't go through. My father was much more, I guess, fundamentalist in his thinking, and really much more into the spankings and things like that. So I heard a lot of stories about their upbringing. Me, I only really got maybe 2 or 3. Maybe 3 spankings, in my time period that I can remember. And my mother was more of the talker, trying to cajole and encourage and kind of guide, but then if it got out of her hands, she'd be like, okay, when your dad gets home, he's gonna take care of type of thing. But then at the funny thing about it was, when he did try to intervene, when he did try to do the spanking thing, she'd be the one at the door, like, that's enough now. Come on, you're hurting the boy, like that kind of stuff. So, we didn't have the traumatic experience that.
Oh, I didn't have that. My father,
Nanda had.
Oh my God, my father would be like, my mother would be the doler of the discipline, but my father, at times, depending on how he felt,
he'd
either be like, that's enough, Debbie, that's enough. Or he'd be like, that was it? You need to give her some more. Give her some more. Right. And not to bring you all some old traumatic conversation.
No, but really just setting the framework for how, some of the traditions we all come out of. This is not unique to you or I. I mean, just being African people here in America, there's some similarities. Even the comedians tell jokes about, getting beatings and spankings and things like that. That has been a norm, I would say, up until recently. I think in the last maybe 10 years or so, you hear more young parents saying things like, I don't want to follow those traditions. Yes. I don't want to do those things anymore.
Yes.
There's no raising awareness. There's still lots of people though who say you better get on that child's behind, spare the rod and spoil the child.
Don't let them embarrass you out here in the street.
Yeah, all that. There's still that energy that's out there. It's not all gone, but there is, I think, more awareness around. I guess what do you call it? Progressive parenting? Is that what term people use?
Yeah, but I would also say living in the deeper South, I've seen way more of that down here and heard more of that than when we lived like in the Mid-Atlantic.
Okay.
So I definitely think that there is something to region. And
that's an exposure thing too.
Progressive or tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if it's the tradition to whoop your child's behind, then that's, and there's a thing that, and I honestly, to be completely transparent, I was pro whoop their ass. And so when we first got together, like when we, discussed having children in our parenting, Fadele would say, Zakai would say, that he didn't come from that. And so what it did for me at the time was it really, I felt ashamed a lot of the times because I felt like, does that mean that how I was raised was wrong? Right. I mean, looking back on those earlier conversations, I felt like, oh, you better than me. You better than me because you. But what has actually happened, getting into the topic,
right,
was with one of our children. So in the West African Orisha practice, when a child is born,
right,
there's a ritual called the Esentaye. It's usually done within the first 3 to 7 days after they've arrived. From my understanding, and from what I've seen with our 3 children, is that it's a ritual that is say, okay, so what does this soul come here to bring to the community?
It's a welcoming.
It's a welcoming.
Okay,
and it's also a naming ceremony.
Right. And in that you get guidelines.
Yes. You get guidelines about how to raise this child, any taboos, any things that they get to stay away from, that you keep them from, how to raise them, what gifts they've come here to express,
exactly.
What things that they may have come here to express that may not be savory. And then a lot of times that's where the taboos come into play.
Right.
Yeah, but what is the mission? And I think that sidebar, I think that it's one of the reasons why I really love this tradition is because we are born with instructions.
Ashe. Good point.
We're born with instructions. We're born with,
and they're not written by Dr. Spock. Not from Star Trek, the other one. Yeah, exactly. The instructions are from our ancestors, from Egun, from spirit,
from our own Ori, from our own soul, from our own spirit, from basically saying, hey, these are my mission papers here. And they have consulted Ifa, the oracle, and have given you the itinerary.
Right. Marching orders, if you will.
The marching orders, right? And so with one of our children, it was said that she has a very, 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 very old spirit. And that it was taboo to spank her. You see my face? Because, and in fact, and Zakai will attest to it, I've never really been one big on really spanking. I talk way more about it than I actually did.
Sure.
But, if they got a hand, like, you want pop?
Right. You're good for a threat, though. Good for a threat.
But, and even now, they're like,
right.
Ma, be quiet. They don't say it, but the energy is like, Ma, cancel the wolf tickets.
I think everybody knows that's not happening. So
it's just so horrible.
Yeah. It's interesting because this is a flashback for a minute. Even when the parents, my dad, he would say that thing about this hurts me more than it hurts you. I think it was the quote. And just
my mother would say that.
Just having to gear yourself up to get a belt and to beat on somebody.
Somebody who came from you.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
There has to be a way in which you would have to almost. It would cause. Remember earlier we were talking about a split in personality. It would cause a split.
Well, it's fear. Because I have one example where I had to spank. Well, I didn't have to. I chose to spank this child. It wasn't my child. And the kid had run off into the street, and the little boy, his mother had given him. When did this happen? It's years ago. His mother had given him, many warnings about being in the street and not going in the street, and they live on a very busy street, and he ran out in the street, and I ran out and got him, but out of fear, like I was so afraid that something could have happened to him, and just the horror of him getting hit by a car, person getting killed. I spat him on his butt a couple of times, and I realized that I was freaking out, and my freak out was to try to control him through the spanking and kind of shut him down, and I realized later on that wasn't the way to do it, but then I realized that's what my parents were doing too. Like the last big spanking I got, I was trying to be a drug dealer. I was a teenager, and my dad was not having it, and he went and got a extension cord and just wailed on me and was like, before I see you die in the streets, I kill you myself. Like a straight out of a Tyler Perry movie or something, And but it was real. But he was afraid. He was afraid his son was going to be lost to the streets, and this was his last resort. Was this, straight out of Roots, Kunta Kinte type of beating, and it didn't necessarily dissuade me from trying to be a drug dealer because the streets is a very powerful pull.
Did you go back and do it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It didn't stop me. That's what I'm saying. That's why I realized it wasn't effective. It actually pushed me away. It made me angry, and it made me feel
harm you. Because it's a harm.
Yeah, it was a harm, but it felt like I didn't have an ally. I didn't have anybody to talk to or to really. Oh my God, this dog is just wild, and now hope we didn't lose our stream. No, we did. Damn God. Oh, we're still there. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Get over here. Get in your house.
So yeah, it really pushed me away, and took me a while to actually get our relationship kind of back. Because I felt like trust was violated. We didn't really have a sense of peace, in what we were doing. There's a question here, Ananda, from LaDonna Lee. She says, is there an alternate ceremony for those who are not born in the tradition? Can adults do a naming ceremony? And it wouldn't be Esantaye.
No,
that's for a newborn.
Yeah.
But there are naming ceremonies.
There are naming ceremonies.
Yes.
People they receive names, and in my experience, usually they would work with a reputable Babalawo Yanifa, or in another tradition, another ATR.
And you can also get divination and find out about taboos and all those kind of things too. You can do an Ifa.
Yes, well, it's a little different because in an Ifa reading, when we receive taboos in a reading, those taboos are based on right now.
Okay.
So right now I have a taboo. I can't eat okra.
Right.
And that is for like 6 months to a year. When initiations come, or like when people have chieftaincy titles, things like this, they'll receive a taboo. And when they receive those taboos are for life. So in the Esantaye, those taboos that are received during an Esantaye are for their life.
Right. But now let's say if someone is going to be initiated.
Yes.
The readings that come along with that.
Excuse me. And every so often somebody might have a divination and a taboo will come, and that is a one for life. But it's not common. Right. But it does happen.
Okay. But in the case of initiation, is that where that kind of, that I guess the deeper piece of it, those lifelong taboos are kind of brought out in that space?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Okay.
Not necessarily. So when people receive shrines too, and the shrine is when you receive the deity in consecration in a pot or some kind of clay pot or something like this, right? And it's a ritual. It is a ritual. It involves time. It's pretty extensive,
right?
And so when you receive a shrine, usually there's a name that may come with that shrine. There are taboos that come with that shrine. What else? All kinds of things. It just depends on the person. The reason why we were talking about children, how we even got into this conversation in terms of how Spirit showed it to me, is it's really important. And I was speaking to a young lady yesterday, that everybody understands that their own destinies are custom cut. That we have 3 children, and each one of them have their own specific way in which they get to be raised. Right. Yes, there's a general umbrella of how we raise our children, and then each one have things that are specific to them in their own life, in their own journey, in their own spiritual manifestation. They have that.
That's right. Yeah, you have to remember too that, your children are only going to be in that child space for a certain amount of time.
Right.
We're really protecting them and preparing them for adulthood. Yes. So every adult is different, right? So same thing. Your kids are different. You have values and rules and guidelines for your home, but then there may be specific things that each one needs for their own nurturing and development, and that's where the Essentia comes in. And that's one of the beautiful things in the tradition, like Ananda was saying. For me, that was probably one of the most beautiful rituals is you have this new being here. Everybody is there to celebrate him or her. And then you get like the keys, to, making sure that they can be their very best.
Yes. And those personality things, let me tell you, the one that has the no spanking taboo, honey, she is like pure dynamite. Like definitely you got to handle with care.
Right. If there were spankings, she would probably be the ones that was.
That's why I thought it was ironic. That's why I thought it was ironic.
Right.
Somebody else really needed them because their personalities didn't call for it. But the thing that was really interesting and insightful for me is because she's such an old spirit. They all are ancestors returned. They all are spirits returned, right? But it's like she came down here with she's the big boss.
Yes.
And it's like, can you beat an elder?
Right.
So would you?
Yeah.
Like, like you're not supposed to you're not supposed to disrespect the elder. So that would be disrespectful.
That's right.
Right. And so, yes, raising children and having this awareness that they have come here with their own mission, and their mission has nothing to do with us.
Right. We're just the vehicles to get them to the planet.
Right.
And then again, to protect them until the point where they're ready to fully actualize their mission. And
carry out like whatever familial, I don't want to say karma, but inheritance that there is. And I think that a lot of times in our families, we don't talk about like deep spiritual legacy.
Oh, see, another good piece about this tradition, right?
Yeah.
Or the tradition, you get to find out about your ancestors and those stories, you know, like even when people get like ancestor pots done and things of that nature,
Well, in diasporical Ifa, you receive an ancestor pot, but in West African Orisha practice, it's called I think it's Okuipa sticks. They're sticks, but they're consecrated.
Okay.
And Opaku. My godfather will really correct me.
Is it the same process of having to find the name?
No,
it isn't like that. Okay. Okay.
It's different.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to go to the cemetery and pick up the soil or anything like this.
Okay. So again, in my original exposure to tradition, it was more diasporic. So I was in college and I had to. I don't think I had to go to the cemetery, but I was asked to.
You remember you took me?
Yeah. But I was asked to, get the list of as many of ancestors as I could from both sides of my family, my mother's people, my father's people. And in doing that and talking to them about these things, I talked to various people. I talked to my parents at the time. I talked to some of my aunts and uncles, and they gave me all these really great stories about my ancestors that they never really shared before. But because I was taking an interest, then they shared those things. And so, it's good to have some of those, because you see some of those characteristics come alive in your children. In the children. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know that's the way that Aunt Annie used to get down, it may seem like something like, where did this come from? It's like, oh no, this is something that's this comes through the DNA. This is not anything strange or new or different.
Epigenetics,
we've been doing
DNA stuff is so real, and I think that like, to your point, like, and I also just want to say that whether or not it's an ancestral pot and it's done in diasporical Ifa or Orisha tradition, whether or not it's done, from traditional West African Orisha, it works. Right. And I don't ever want people to understand that when I make a differentiation, it's based on where I am currently, how I practice currently, and I only have the utmost honor and respect for my foundation, because that was my foundation.
Right.
Right. So I just want to say that, because if you are practicing,
keep on.
Keep it on.
Yeah. One of my teachers said, you want to dig 1,000 shallow holes or one deep hole. What I'm saying? So you're going to run around here and there, and you're going to focus on what you're doing and get the most out of it. Which is, I think, that's the way. You may evolve with something else later on, but wherever you are, get the depth from it.
How would you say raising our children in the tradition that we practice, how do you think that informs you as a parent? Like Esentaye withstanding, but even within that, with that knowledge being there, but we're not looking at the Esentaye every day. It's not something we're consistently thinking about. And in fact, it's something that actually just becomes a part of your life, especially if you're paying attention to taboos and stuff.
Sure.
Then you put everybody on notice who will watch your kids. These are the things they don't eat. These are the colors or whatever that they don't wear, whatever.
Right.
So, but how do you think it informs you, like, in your own?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is having a relationship with the shrines. So when things are happening, that you don't understand, or you're trying to get an answer, you have a source to go to get some guidance. Like sometimes, like, let's say, the baby's crying uncontrollably. You've done everything to console. You don't know what's happening, and you go and do, quick check-ins, with the shrines, and they'll say, oh, well, she needs to get some cool water on the ori, or she may need, something other kind of application.
Yes.
And it works. It's like, oh wow, like, and stuff you would never even thought of. Like, again, coming from just a regular, African man here in America, you're gonna try to get a kid some candy or rock or something like that, but it may not be that. It's something else, and the spirit can tell us right away, pinpoint right to it. So I find a great value in that, and knowing that we're not alone in trying to address issues, but also as parents coming together from different styles and backgrounds.
Way different backgrounds.
Our tradition gives us a common space to come to.
Yeah.
So it isn't like me trying to influence you or tell you what to do based on my background or vice versa. It's us coming together to the shrines.
Yeah.
And that gives us a collective approach.
Right.
And so I made to put my stuff to the side. You made to put your stuff to the side, because what we're getting from the shrine,
it trumps it.
Exactly. And I think that's a real jewel, because again, like the woman was saying to me earlier this week, there's no blueprints, no guidelines. And then because if you're leaning on your own understanding or trying to read books, it's not as personal or direct to the spirits that you are living with, your children, yourself,
Right.
all these spirits are interacting.
Honey.
And so to have that spiritual connection,
all these spirits
to guide is essential. My dad, people ask him about parenting all the time because people really admired him with 5 kids, and it seemed like we were all, well behaved, and we all were, the stuff kids supposed to do, right? Go to school, that kind of stuff. And he just said he just prayed all the time, was reading the Bible. He said he didn't know. He just prayed and asked for guidance. I don't see that as being very much different than going to the shrines and getting guidance,
Especially going to your ancestors, because the ancestors will tell you what the deal is. Like, especially if it's some ancestral things that are rearing up.
Mm-hmm.
Also, sometimes I just go directly to the child's spirit.
Yeah, speak more about that. About how are you using the tradition as a compass and a support?
You know how I use it because I be down there throwing.
I know the people who are watching this don't know. I'm here with you all the time. She's the one always saying, "Did you divine? Go down and divine and find out." So she definitely. But talk about it. Yeah.
A thing that I think is just so amazing and just so absolutely beautiful is that, in my personal experience, the spirits will come to you in dreams and show you how to handle the children. They've come to me in dreams and shown me things I need to do with the children. They've come to me in dreams and have actually admonished me, even on the mat when I go to talk to them. Okay, you need to focus more on the children. You need to be a bit more patient with them. You get to cool your temper down, sure. Like those are ways that you get to have more fun with your children. Like they have done that. And so I'm going to listen to them, and it's different because if he tells me, I'm like, you judging me?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Even though he's not, but it can be hard to hear from another human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they tell me, I know there's no judgment involved, period. There's not, you know what I'm saying? Because they're like, this has nothing to do with, but I think they can see the long picture. They can see way further than I can. Not saying that you can't in your own intuitive space, but there's somewhere in dealing with, our ancestors and the Orisha that for me, my ego will fall away. I'll allow it to do so because that's where my reverence steps in. And then in revering our own children, like having a reverence for these souls that chose to come here and be a part of our community, a part of our family. Can you imagine? Yes, it is a part of their own, the continuation of their own eternal journey,
right?
But I feel like I remember being pregnant with our son, and I was like 36, 37 weeks pregnant. And I just started crying in the shower, belly all big, like, yo, you're about to leave like this existence where there's no real drama like here. It's not like here.
Talking about leaving the spirit realm.
He's about to like filter his spirit down into this, as an elder of mine would say, Mama Cindy, spacesuits, incur as soon as get plugged into familial karma and familial trauma and the reconciliation of all these things. And that's just being born.
Right.
Not even yet being exposed to. And this is coming into a family that's pretty intact. Choosing this. And I remember just crying and feeling so grateful that he chose me to be his mother. So in that, if nothing else, I have to respect his spirit, and I have to respect him, all of them. We're talking specifically since he was our firstborn.
Sure.
Like having this reverence.
Yeah, and you use that word. It's interesting because when children are first born, it seems like there's a lot of reverence. Like people are so excited, they want to gather around, and just that energy of that innocence and newness and freshness of the baby is there.
Right.
Everybody wants to be a part of that. People go to whatever tradition that you're in, whether it's a naming ceremony or christening or whatever it might be. People want to be there. They want to witness. They make pledges that I'm going to support and be there by their side. But then once the kid hits, 10, 11, 12, and then those teenage years comes in, a lot of that reverence, it seems to go away. And people, it's almost like you got to control this person. Like, don't go too far. Don't do this. Oh, even before that. Yeah. 2-3 years old. It happens quickly. Like you go from the sweetness of this to this is some kind of a wild chaos force in the house that needs to be brought under control. And what happens? What happened to the reverence?
I remember that time several months ago, I was talking to my mom on the phone and she almost had a meltdown because the baby was hollering.
Yes.
The one that we don't spank.
Yes.
And my mother was like...
Their mom doesn't even live anywhere near. She's way somewhere else. But they're on the phone. Okay. Uh-huh.
And this particular child demands my attention 1,000% of the time. Like, it's only the grace of the Orisha and the shrines that when we do this radio show that she's not like barreling in here. And so, and I don't say that to be flippant. I mean, I really mean that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it really undid my mother to hear her not being able to be consoled, not being able to be quieted. And I think there was something about my mother also as a protector, like knowing like I'm tired and I have all these other things going on and how come this child just can't fall in line. And I actually ended up getting off the phone with my mom. And it ended pretty peacefully for the most part. I mean, she was really upset. It really triggered her. But I would say that that's her spirit. I've asked the shrines multiple times. They say she came here with like what's up?
Right.
Kind of knuck if you buck.
Right.
Kind of spirit.
Right.
Like that's how she came here.
Get down or lay down. Yeah.
And they like a warrior spirit. Not like she has that.
She is a warrior.
She is. And she's a warrior for good.
Right.
And warriors aren't necessarily known to have gentle character.
Nah, I guess you got business to take care of. You gotta bust down some of these walls, right?
And so as much as I can, like, not to extinguish that from her, because that belongs to her.
And in some place, when it's time to activate that in the world, she's gonna need it.
But it's also been shared with us that she needs a lot of guidance with all of that. So it's like and already to have her very much involved in spiritual work. Right.
Because that again, that's the grounding, that's the guidance. But think about how many people we have in our society right now, African people, who have a warrior spirit, but never got the guidance as to how to manage that or where to apply it even.
Right.
And then you do it in the wrong place or it comes out in the wrong way. And then you find yourself in a situation where you're not able to self-actualize.
Right.
I'm glad you're moving to this point about, introducing children to the tradition.
Yes.
Speak to that. Like, apart from them being babies and us going through the various rituals and stuff for that, but, at what point is it the right time to introduce children, as far as, teaching them about the shrines and things of that nature? How do we play that out in our home?
We played it out when they were born.
Right. From the very beginning.
From the very beginning, there were rituals done while they were in belly.
Yes.
That they received and benefited from in order to make or allow the passage from the spirit realm to the earth plane, to the material plane, to be as easy as possible.
Right. It's all very intentional. I mean, that's why it's African spiritual tradition. These traditions are thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And so it's very intentional. This is not something that was just cooked up yesterday.
Even with this, out of all of them, and I should have known better.
What's that?
Even with the one we're speaking of.
Right.
With that pregnancy, I remember I couldn't go out past dusk.
That's right.
I received the taboo for the whole pregnancy.
Yeah.
I received it when I was 3 months pregnant with her. I could not go out past dusk.
Had to be in the house before the sun went.
I had to be, which is hard in the wintertime because I got pregnant in the fall.
That's
And so it was just like a weird type of thing.
Preparing us for COVID. Yeah.
And so what I will say is that I find great joy in practicing the tradition and having a resource, having spiritual technology that we can go to.
Mm-hmm.
Like even as like you get readings, and the readings might say, the oracle may say, either Orisha or Ifa may say, the messages like, and this has happened, turn your children's beds around in their room because they're having sleep problems. And they were having sleep problems that week. And I didn't even ask about that, but it came up as a message in the divination. And so I will always say, when I talk to other parents and they talk to me about their children, if they know me well enough, I will always, I'm like, this is what I know. I don't know anything else.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you having an issue, and this is going off topic, but I think it's a good topic for us to discuss next week, is if you having issues, go to the shrines.
Yeah.
And let me also just say, shrines aren't just for the initiated.
I say.
That people practice tradition, they're devotees of the Orisha, of Ifa, that it'll come up for them to receive shrines. The thing about this tradition that's different on some level than Christianity, to me, I could be wrong, is it's a daily immersion.
Okay.
But it depends on individuals. Some people, they shrine pots be dry, not, engaged unless something is wrong.
Sure.
But if a person is engaged and devoted, that's again devotion, being a devotee. If you're engaged and devoted, then you're going to be going and praying and singing and communicating on a daily basis, because if you don't, you feel like something is missing. At least for me, I feel like something is missing from my life when I don't.
Right.
And so in terms of our children, you go and ask about your children. When people be adults, they're sitting around here, marriage is flailing and floundering. There's so many adults, I'd be like, they'll, like women, like when I talk to women, sisters, they like, oh, well, he's having a hard time, maintaining his mojo.
Okay, man.
Talk to the shrines about it.
Right.
I've had, God sisters say to me, spiritual God sisters say to me, you talk up to them about that. I talk to them about everything. They know me. Why would, what? There's so much freedom when you're known.
Okay.
There's so much freedom in being known and not judged.
Right.
With the spirits. There's a freedom.
Yeah. Why would you hide things from the spirit? You can't hide anything anyway.
I think because a lot of times we are raised in this world that's like, well, you don't talk about sex with God.
Or that God is going to judge you. That God is the judge.
Well, they say you ain't supposed to be having sex unless you're supposed to
be married or
procreating.
Well, that's some people say that, yeah.
Some people do that.
Some people actually, yeah, that's true.
That's how they live their life.
Sure. Yeah, but I guess I want to go back a little bit to about the kids. One of the things that because they're young, one thing we have them do is greet the shrines every day. After they brush their teeth and wash their face and everything, they pray to they know how to pray to their Ori. And then they go to our shrine area and they greet the shrines.
Yes, they do.
That's kind of their first steps. And then we'll do more things, exposing them to divination and things of that nature. That littlest
one, I have her cast for me sometimes.
Yes, yeah, she's into that. She was casting. She was doing through the motions of casting.
Yeah,
like way early.
I mean, infant.
Big before you even. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think if you think about other spiritual traditions. Communities that are strong, they immerse their children in that tradition from the earliest, and that becomes their foundation that they use throughout their whole life. You know, and the scriptures say too in the Bible about training up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. You know, so that it's very real. So it doesn't like you have to compartmentalize and say, well, mommy and daddy are doing this, and you guys are over there with Disney. No, it's a community. It's a family experience.
It's wild because now even the oldest, he knows, like when we had to do the offering to
Ashur, we make Ebo.
Well, it was Adimu.
What you did? Okay.
It was the offering, and one day there's a guinea. The next day there's a pot with the guinea head in it, and he's like, "Oh, we made offerings,
right?"
You know, and it teaches them about the life not being permanent.
Sure.
And sometimes I cringe a little bit about that, you know. But I mean,
and the need for sacrifice, you know, of various types, right?
Various types of sacrifice, and then also like, but I'm like, but you're not saying that when you eating the crispy chicken.
But there wasn't any resistance or anything.
No,
like that.
I'm not saying that. But okay. In the beginning, he was, you know, and a lot of times they didn't see it.
Right.
They just knew, they heard wings flapping or something like this.
Sure.
The next day it was gone. Well, where did it go? You know. And then, like, as he's gotten older, because the other two, they're not around when we do to see it done.
Right.
Which is different from back home. I mean, I think some people do. They allow the child to be around to see. You know. I don't know. I don't know if I want them necessarily seeing that yet. But he understands. The oldest understands that.
Sure.
The guinea was here and now it's gone. You know, and it is, and also to see how some of their, going back to Asanteye, to see how it's a living thing.
Okay.
Because for the oldest, for example, it was spoken of that he would be a prayer. He would have like this thing about him about being very clean and very devotional. He prays over his water.
Anything that you give him a piece of candy before he put it in his mouth, he's gonna say a prayer. I mean, some real prayers too, not no light stuff. Right. Really like sincere. I mean, you said you pour some water before you drink it. He's gonna say a prayer.
And he has Ashe.
Yeah, he's been doing this.
He's 8. He's been doing it since he was like 2.
Yeah, very much so. And that was in his essence.
He talked about that. So to see it like come to life, you know, is mind blowing.
Yeah. No, it's just those are like those things, those witnesses or testimony to the potency of the tradition. You know, it's like whenever you're doing anything, there's you're doing things and you're on the right path. There's signs that show you that what you're doing is the right thing.
It's confirmation,
and that's a sign. I mean, you get this all these messages, this insight, and then you see it play out. You're like, oh man, this thing is for real. This is real. This is real, and it's encouraging to go deeper. And to be even more devoted.
If
it's worked in this instance, imagine if we take it to this level.
Yes, and it works all the time. It works even before the divinations and before Ebo. That's my personal philosophy. That it's always working. That what the deities, what the creator, what the creation wants from us is our love and devotion. Because we have already been loved and devoted. It's already been given to us so we can even exist.
That's right.
You know? And so then in our devotion, it's not to receive, it's actually just our devotion is saying thank you.
Right.
It's just you're in devotion because you're in awe of just the awesomeness of it all. To be so cared for and loved that all these tools are available, all the support is here, and you're not alone, and you don't have to be isolated in your little group, or you're just you and your kids, or just you and your family. That you've got this tradition, you've got
your ancestors. You got all this collective,
right?
That want to see you win. They want to see you manifest your destiny. To self-actualize, to be who you came here to be.
They're actually guiding you to do that. That's right. What they're there for. That's what your familial shrine is, because Orisha are. Because when people find out, like, it's not just, oh, I'm a child of Oshun or Shango, Kao, Kabisileo. It's not just that, but it is these deities have lived in your family, your bloodline, since there was just a disconnection from it,
right?
Whether through the Great Ma'afa or the colonialization of Christianity or Islam, like in the people converted, but they were still there. You can't remove them from the blood. I was talking to this young sister last night, and I was telling her, I was like, because she's Nigerian but her people are Muslim,
okay,
and anyway, so one of the things that I said to her was, one of the things that I shared with her, I was like, you can't remove Orisha from your blood.
Mm-hmm.
You can't remove the prayers from your blood. Don't you know that you're walking and talking prayers? Like, people prayed for you before they ever knew you would ever even come into being. People made ebo, people made offerings and sacrifices before, not knowing that it was going to talk, when specifically that was talking about you, that was done for you.
Right.
And so, like, that is powerful. And I feel for me, because my father's from Nigeria, but I wasn't raised in the tradition,
right,
that to be a part of this tradition and the workings, it works. And it works whether or not you believe. That's the thing that's kind of like, I mean, if you believe and you have faith in what you're doing, it adds to the potency of it.
Right.
But it doesn't keep it from happening because you don't believe in it.
Wow, that's really powerful. I mean, it's like anything else. Like, you may not believe, in God, let's say, but you're still benefiting from the air, and the sun is still shining on you, and all those kind of things. So you're right. You don't have to. But if you do choose,
it makes it that much more of like this sweet experience.
It's a collaboration.
Yeah.
Because then you're actively engaged. So we're talking about parenting. So parenting is an active engagement with these beings we call children.
Right.
And then if you also are actively engaged with spirit,
right,
then it makes that process of raising your children much more sweeter,
Yeah.
Because you've got the support, you've got a perspective.
Right.
It's a lot different than just saying, I've got to do these things today, get in order, but really seeing even the long, the trajectory that the child can potentially follow, and encouraging them along that path. It's not hit or miss.
Right.
You're not guessing. You really have a blueprint.
And some parents I've spoken to take the standing that, it's their life, it's their journey. Like, I'm just here to guide. But also, for me, when I take the position that I am responsible for how it turns out on some level, based on how I nurture them. Some people will say, well, I gave them everything they wanted.
Right.
But they ain't want all those things. They wanted you.
Right.
Did you give them you?
That's what you wanted, based most of the time on what you didn't get when you was a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of I see that too. A lot of parents try to live vicariously through their children. So I see it, like, as a man, I see it in men who want to get their little boy out there playing football or playing basketball. And this kid might be more of a STEM kid. They might just want to work with rockets or be on the computer doing stuff all the time. And you're like, man, get out there, and I'm sure women have their own version of that. And we have to really be careful to realize that we want to nurture them to be who they are, not imprint on them who we would have liked to have been. You know what I'm saying? Like, the things that we didn't get a chance to do, it's like, that may not be for them. right. And to really relax on that. And again, tap into spirit to get the true guidance as to, where this child gets to go and who we get to evolve into as parents, right?
Right. So you think you slick because I didn't say it.
What?
You really just went into what we get to talk about next week.
Oh, really?
Because I'm a firm believer of letting spirit guide this conversation.
Yeah.
This African spiritual conversation.
Right? Yes.
And so what is life like? Are we living in the shadows of our parents or our ancestors or society's perceptions of who we get to be? Are we living in the fullness of who we get to be in this life?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a great point of self-reflection, and as we're going into this kind of full moon period, great time for meditation and just tapping in. People say the veil is thinner, All Hallows Eve. This is All Hallows Eve, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
So the veil is thinner, they say, so it's a good time to commune. And to really think about that, man. Am I owning my unique space, or am I living in the shadows,
continuing to live out other people's expectations, traumas, projections? Yes.
And even the program that we taking on the regular, just through media and stuff like that, we take on other people's.
That's why it's called programming.
Yeah. I mean, do I really care who went to go see the president? Nah, why am I worried about that? Why am I doing that? That has nothing to do with me. I didn't go, you know what I'm saying? Right. But we get caught up in this stuff. And it's so funny, just kind of as an aside, somebody was saying, one of the prominent news people was saying that he had to cut off friends because of politics. And I was like, that doesn't make no sense. They must not have been your friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, you
must not have been that heavily invested.
No, to allow these things to divide us, which are transient. These things are moving and changing all the time. So, you're gonna pick up and discard friends every 4 years based on the changing of the guard. I mean, that doesn't make,
Some people pick up and discard friends based on what their zip code is.
Yeah, well, I mean, back to the children. You can't discard your children. We hope you don't. You know what I'm saying? Don't. Please don't discard your children. Please take the time to investigate who they are before you start to invest your programs and stuff on them. See what they really are about. Like our oldest. We've been told that he may be, imam, or someone who is more into Islam, and we practice African spiritual tradition. But we're not going to stop him from learning about Islam. We actually.
My father's Muslim.
Her father's Muslim.
Our ancestry is Muslim. So yes. There are people who are imams back home and still cast a pele for clients in the evening.
There it is. So all these things can operate in conjunction with each other.
Yeah.
And God is ultimately one. There's so many different facets of that energy.
Yes.
And we shouldn't be afraid to tap in.
No.
And to use what we have to get the best possible results for ourselves and our community, for our families.
And while you have them,
yes,
just love them.
That's right.
Because
it's only a short time. They're gonna be like, I gotta go. I gotta go be me, right? So while they're there, you love up on. Don't be so afraid of what could happen. Like, this is a lot of conversation now about the talk you gotta have with your kids. I don't know about all that. I mean, when the time is right, you gotta have that talk. That's fine, but don't get so caught up in the fear that's being generated that you don't love your children and you don't let them know they're loved, and that the world is not out to hurt them. That kind of imprint is not positive. You're just passing on trauma. I don't teach my son that everybody is trying to hurt him or he's going to go out and somebody's going to try. No, that's not the conversation.
We do teach discernment, though.
Yeah. But the first thing is love. If you love yourself and you know yourself, you can navigate all types of different things that happen in the world. If you're not moving from a space of fear. If you move from a space of fear, then fight or flight is going to definitely come
like that time you got into that car when you were a kid and that person drove off with you?
Yeah. What is the example you're trying to make? What is it?
Like, you were in tune enough to know that it wasn't right.
Well, first I was out of tune because I don't know what I was spaced out. I was tired, whatever. And it looked like a familiar vehicle. It was a very strange episode. Person pulled up And like, I only said, open the door, asked me again or something. And I thought I knew who it was. And I got in the car and we started driving. I realized I didn't know who it was. I looked over and said, oh no, it's the wrong car. I'm saying, pull over, and the person did. To thank God, they pulled over and I got out. I think I was like maybe around 10 or 11.
But why would they pick up somebody that they don't know?
I mean, come on, it's predators out here.
There are predators, but they let you out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's God's grace. I feel like it was God's grace. You said it was my discernment to know.
But love too. You said being tapped into yourself.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid.
What I'm saying? You weren't afraid.
No, I wasn't afraid. Hold up. Yeah, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid. I just knew that this wasn't the right place to be. And it did let me out. But I have other examples of that, even as older, just love. I mean, people pulling out guns and stuff, and I'm like, hey man, I'm not here to hurt you, da da da. And again, but that's that deep rooted training I had from a kid. Mm-hmm. Like I wasn't taught about a lot of fear. I wasn't fearing anybody. A lot of love was poured into me, so I was able to navigate that. So we want to encourage you to pour into your children.
Yes.
You got to pour into yourself first. Mm-hmm. You can have something to actually give to them.
Yes.
And share the tradition, whatever tradition that you are living with or exploring, share it with your children so they can benefit. It isn't just for you. It's for everybody, your community, your family, everybody.
Everyone's. So we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah.
Same time,
same station.
Shout out to Sister Ro. We love you. Thank you for having us. Any
comments, any questions, just share them to the different pages that you're on viewing this. And we love to bring you into the conversation.
Yep. One breath, one vibe, one tribe. This has been this episode of African Spiritual Conversations with Zakai and Ananda Free.
Be well.